Robin Hood Radio presents Stage Right or Not with Michele Willens. Michele is a longtime journalist and herself is a published playwright of several theatrical works. She's a frequent contributor to the Huffington Post, Daily Beast, and the Atlantic websites.
Well, who says you need to go to Broadway or even what we think of as traditional off-Broadway to experience theater? I just had one of those only in New York kinds of weeks. Let's see, there was a conversation-lesson about how to process Shakespeare by one of the theatrical giants in that field. Then there was a show, though I use that term loosely, that places you inside a courtroom as you listen to an actual case on a pressing issue. Next was the opportunity to see one of the hot new plays in London on a movie screen here. And finally, I returned to see arguably the best musical ever with a new cast that has made that show a very different experience. Well, we should start there, since My Fair Lady is, well, one of the greats. There is not an unfamiliar, unhummable, and non-wonderful song in the score. It continues its run at Lincoln Center, but has just added 4 new actors, and each replacement, I have to say, is an improvement, beginning with the always delightful Laura Benanti, who is the ideal Eliza Doolittle. She brings the humor back into a production that felt rather bloodless. She also has a gorgeous ease with the songs that the previous Eliza, Lauren Ambrose, struggled with, albeit valiantly. And while Norbert Leo Butz was a dandy Alfred Doolittle, Danny Bernstein, simply by his age and innate lovability, fits the role better. The same is true with Christian Dante White, who, by the way, is not white and brings a whole new level of humor and humanity to Freddie, Eliza's smitten suitor who can't get off the street where she lives. And finally, yes, Diana Rigg was regal and terrific as Mrs. Higgins, but Rosemary Harris at 91 makes you laugh and cry with every line. They have all, by the way, managed to improve Harry Patton's performance as Henry Higgins. He has grown into this role beautifully, and I doubt you will leave thinking of Rex Harrison anymore. He and Benanti have palpable chemistry, and the ending now feels even more ambiguous in the right way. Will Eliza come back? Well, not to fetch his slippers, certainly, but we leave with more well-earned hope this time. Now, very different in every way from what Lincoln Center does so lavishly is a company called Waterwell. It's about 17 years old, performs in unusual places around the city, and focuses on current issues. Now, most recently, it has been offering a piece called Courtroom in conjunction with the Fordham Law School. I caught it at St. Mark's Church. Now here we have 9 actors who hardly seem to be acting, and the naturalistic style suits the content as they speak the actual words and portray the real-life figures in a case dealing with immigration. That's a case that began in Chicago in 2008 and was finally concluded in 2017. The case deals with a Philippine woman who marries an American and comes to this country. The trouble starts when she goes for a driver's license, which leads to her also being given a voter registration form, which led to her showing up at the voting booth, even though she wasn't a U.S. citizen. But no one along the way told her she was not allowed to vote. And the next thing she knew, she was fighting deportation. We entrust the government to do the right thing, says the defense. And in this case, the plaintiff was seemingly misled and yet paid some heavy consequences. The actor and company founder, Arian Moayed, told me the idea here is to put a human face on the immigration debate. Now, Moayed himself immigrated to America from Iran as a young boy. He's had lead roles on Broadway in shows like The Humans and can also currently be seen on the HBO series Succession. A future Waterwell project, he told me, is Fleet Week Follies, which will deal with veterans. The company may be small, and the tickets, at least for this one, were free, but seems to have a solid reputation. Stars like Kelly O'Hara are supporters, and one of the actors in Courtroom is Kathleen Chalifant, a highly respected and busy New York actress. So keep an eye out for Courtroom, especially since the topic has never been more, well, topical. My next experience was, in fact, in a movie theater. Now, the National Theatre of London occasionally presents a play to a live audience there and then shows it on movie screens here shortly after. I went this past week to see David Hare's latest piece with the really bad title of I'm Not Running. Now, of course, the title has some meaning, but still there could have been better ones. The play deals with a couple that connects at university. They go off in different directions, but end up as potential rivals in Parliament. The play presents strong, very, very British ideas and some clever lines about the Labour Party, sexism, and politics. Why do we love people when they're outside parties but distrust them when they get inside? One character asks. There's one thing politicians really fear, and that's a movement, says another. Hare also takes parents to task here. What is family except the people you can't get rid of? Well, there's not a word of Brexit in this back and forth in time but compelling tale. I have to assume that I'm Not Running will be making its way to New York, as most David Hare plays do. So stay tuned on that one. And my theatrical week also included a visit to the lovely and historic National Arts Club, where I watched the actor and Shakespearean dramaturg Dakin Matthews speak to a group about processing, unpacking, breaking down, you choose your word, the Bard's text. We were all given a long passage from The Merchant of Venice, and after Matthews, who, by the way, is playing the pivotal role of the judge in To Kill a Mockingbird, took us line through line. Well, sure enough, an hour later, the iambic pentameter started to sound like real English. And finally, I take no pleasure in predicting this and having predicted this, but I have been saying that I thought the band's visit would be putting up a closing notice. Well, yes, it has. It had a nice run and won the Tony with no competition, by the way, but I always felt it was a lovely, intimate show that should have stayed off Broadway. Well, it can certainly travel and try to earn back some money, but Jill, the band's visit here is all but over.
You know, one of the things that as a civilian I always worry about is if I'm ever on my way into the city listening to traffic on, one of the big stations, and I hear ads for certain musicals, because they only, and I don't know, I've always wondered about this, but they only come out when they start needing to sell tickets.
Sure.
So you can pretty much track the diminution of the audience by the appearance of these ads on these radio ads in most cases. Yeah. And is it meant? Has anybody ever thought about changing that round?
Well, that happens. I mean, when they don't need, you're not going to hear ads for Hamilton. When they don't need it, they don't do it. That's why they put up these signs that say half price. Well, I
totally understand. It's just one of the hardest things to do. Just in you learn this from radio is you want people who have business are the best underwriters because people go there and there's an energy. Whereas people who need need customers, there's a whole thing where, in fact, it would be lovely if you were doing so well that you just advertise for the sake of public perception, and people hear it.
Yeah, that's right. Look at all the ads for To Kill a Mockingbird. I see them on TV every day, and they take an ad every day in the the theater section. They don't have to. They have not had one show that hasn't sold out, not one. But they're still doing it, and I think that's what you're saying, that they're still advertising.
That's what you because that's what you do. And the reason that I mentioned this apropos of the band's visit is because that was one of the a few months ago I heard an ad. And by the way, it's not the audience at all for it. Separate and apart from where it should be, whether it should have moved to Broadway, etc. Once you hear it, it's almost like, whoops, okay, they're going to be posting they're trying to keep it going now.
Yeah, and maybe after they did announce this, and maybe they'll give it one more boost, which has happened in the past, where suddenly a lot of people buy tickets. Oh, it's going to close, so they get another chunk of time and money out of it. That's happened with School of Rock. It's happened with a few others. And that could, but I think it's probably had its run. It was never, I love the band's visit. I have nothing bad to say about it. It always just felt small. It didn't feel like the tourist show from New Jersey, for the New Jersey folks. It's a very specific, small piece about the Mideast and relations, and I'm actually amazed it did as well as it did, and I'm happy for it. And I think it will have. It's an easy show to travel around the country, and I'm sure they will. It's not a big cast, and it's no orchestra. It's a sweet show, but another one hits the dust.
Now, My Fair Lady, which sounds as though it's been fully re-enthused.
Absolutely.
Is it a limited run or is it open-ended?
It seems open-ended.
Okay.
It seems open-ended. I can't believe Laura Benanti would do it less than a year. The others all did it. It's about a year old now. I think it started it's getting close to having been there a year. And I can't believe she won't continue on. And she's just remarkable. It just felt like a different show to me. And I liked it very much the first time. I think you'll remember, because how do you not like that show? But there was a humorless, there was something about it.
It was more serious, and how are they going to handle Eliza in the Me Too movement?
Exactly.
And you know what, guys? Entertainment, please.
Yeah, and that's the way it feels now. I'm telling you, I cried at least 2 times. First time I never did. I don't know, it was very powerful. And the song so beautiful, and the cast, Danny Burstein really gives it a wonderful, lovely touch. And Freddie, no, they're all, it just shows what you can do. You can re-energize a show with a new cast. And you always think the second cast is going to be worse. No, not in this case.
Stage Right or Not with Michele Willens, produced in the studios of Robin Hood Radio, robinhoodradio.com.